Tonight, the government sells its major project strategy with Monday's budget vote looming.
They have approached this as though they're a majority.
But they're a minority, and losing could lead to another election. Plus, the major project with major questions.
How many more problems are we going to see as they fast track?
Donald Trump calls the Epstein files a hoax, then orders a criminal investigation into high-profile Democrats.
I don't think it's appropriate for him to do it.
Amid the Grey Cup hype, fans react to new CFL rules.
I don't want them to turn us into the NFL.
Hammers it away.
The state of a changing league ahead of its biggest game.
From CBC News, this is The National with Erica Johnson.
Thanks for joining us. Just days away from facing a confidence vote on his budget, it's still not clear that Prime Minister Mark Carney's government will survive it. And now a decidedly mixed review from the Parliamentary Budget Officer is giving more fuel for critics. The PBO questioned the government's budget math and said it will lead to deficits far beyond the target level set late last year, even if it does end up being sustainable in the long term. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre blasted the Liberals for phony accounting. As Rafi Boudjikanian shows, if the Liberals can't secure more yeses, or at least some abstentions, Canada could be heading for another election.
A foiled ribbon cutting for the Prime Minister in Quebec and a gentle ribbing from the Premier. It's hard to cut, said François Legault. But there were sharper budget criticisms to come. The Parliamentary Budget Officer questioned its math, saying it's unlikely to be able to stay within its deficit targets, and that the budget blurred the lines between one-time capital costs and recurring operational spending. Then there was Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre given another opening to attack ahead of Monday's parliamentary vote.
Are you confident that all of your MPs will vote against the budget?
100% of our MPs opposed the costly Carney credit card budget that is going to drive up the cost of food, housing, and living for Canadians.
It means the minority Liberals will need support elsewhere, but the Bloc Québécois has vowed to vote against the budget, and the NDP has said its 7 caucus members are still making up their minds, though they have floated the idea of abstaining, which would help the government. This political scientist says the Liberals have not tried very hard to win anyone's confidence.
They have approached this as though they're a majority. They've approached this by trying to build a narrative weeks out in advance of the budget that if we end up in an election, it's all the opposition party's fault. And so I think, and they seem to not want to compromise.
Carney's ministers say Canadians have already spoken out.
They'll tell you, we just had an election 6 months ago. We gave Mr. Carney a mandate to execute a plan. That plan is in the budget. And instead of having an election on Boxing Day or the 28th of December, we prefer to let Mr. Carney implement his plan.
Still, back in April, a big part of Carney's winning strategy was an argument he was best placed to end the trade war with the U.S., an unfulfilled promise looming over what could happen on Monday and beyond, Erica.
And Rafi, what exactly do the Liberals need to pass that budget vote?
They need 172 votes to pass this confidence test, and they're 2 votes short, even with Chris d'Entremont, who recently crossed the floor from the Conservatives. Now, things could still work out in their favor if they can sway a couple of opposition MPs, or if enough, simply don't vote. That way, those opposition MPs wouldn't be supporting the budget openly, but also could not be blamed for sending Canadians into an election.
Thanks for this, Rafi Boudjikanian in Ottawa. Donald Trump is calling for a new investigation into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and his links to specific Democrats. This after emails from Epstein's estate surfaced this week that referenced him. Katie Nicholson joins us from Washington. Katie, for months now, the message from Donald Trump has been nothing to see here. Now he wants an investigation?
Yeah, this is another case of President Trump making a request on social media and Attorney General Pam Bondi responding. The president posted this morning again about what he calls the Epstein hoax and directed Bondi and the FBI to investigate some prominent Democrats, to investigate Jeffrey Epstein's involvement and relationship with Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, JP Morgan and Chase, and many other people and institutions to determine what was going on with them and him. Now, within hours, Bondi posted a response saying she had asked Jay Clayton, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, to take the lead on the investigation. Clayton served in the first Trump administration as the Securities and Exchange Commission chair for about 3 years and is considered a close Trump ally. And tonight on Air Force One, Trump seemed to be ducking the responsibility for the investigation.
I am considered the chief law enforcement agent in the country, and I'm allowed to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm not doing it. I had nothing to do with that choice. As an example, that came from Pam Bondi from the DOJ.
Now, Erica, this comes a few days before an anticipated House vote to release the Epstein files, the DOJ's sprawling evidence against the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who died in prison in 2019, and after more than 20,000 documents from his estate were released.
And all of this, Katie, clearly raising some red flags.
Yeah, certainly Trump directing an investigation of Democrats is being met with skepticism by and not just Democrats, but also Republicans. Take Representative Don Bacon from Nebraska.
When the president gives orders to Pam Bondi and our, law enforcement arms of the federal government, it just, what it does, it undercuts the credibility of our law enforcement. So I don't think it's appropriate for him to do it.
And there is some legal analysis out there suggesting an ongoing investigation could give some in Congress a reason to vote against the release of these files. The measure is expected to get more Republican votes than initially thought in the House, but even if the Senate also passes the bill, Trump could veto it, and the Senate could then override that veto if 67 of the 100 senators voted in support. Erica?
All right, that's Katie Nicholson in Washington tonight. The president of Venezuela is calling for the U.S. to avoid conflict after Washington's dramatic military buildup in the Caribbean. Paul Hunter looks at the rhetoric from both sides.
Defiant and surrounded by supporters, Venezuela's president marched through the streets of Caracas in the face of aggressive rhetoric and growing military force from the U.S. Raise your hand if you want to be a slave, he said to Venezuelans. Raise your hand if you want Venezuela to become a Yankee colony. Nobody did. They stand with Maduro, who's now mobilizing nearly 200,000 military personnel just in case. We support Venezuela, said this woman. We'll go out to the streets to defend our homeland with tooth and nail. This as the Pentagon released these images of the U.S. military buildup in the region. The massive aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, as well as the multiple warships, fighter jets, and a nuclear submarine already in the Caribbean. The latest U.S. strike on what it says was another drug smuggling boat this week, now said to have killed 4 people. It's the 20th such strike since September. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, meanwhile posting, "I'm announcing Operation Southern Spear. This mission removes narco-terrorists from our hemisphere and secures our homeland from the drugs that are killing our people." Add to that reports of more high-level talks in the White House of potential military action, and the forceful anti-Maduro language from Donald Trump. And as he left for the weekend in Florida, there are many who now believe the U.S. is readying to force a regime change in Venezuela. Asked, is he concerned about possible aggression? No more endless wars, said Maduro. No more Libya, no more Afghanistan. My message is just peace.
The Washington Post is now quoting an unidentified White House official as saying Maduro is very scared, and he should be. Trump, on his way to Florida, telling reporters that he's sort of made up his mind on Venezuela, but he went no further. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
The UN's Human Rights Council is launching an inquiry into reported atrocities in Sudan. It concerns the actions committed by the RSF in the city of Fasher.
Unspeakable atrocities deliberate killings, torture, rape, all at a mass scale.
Bloodstains on the ground in Fasher have been photographed from space. The stain on the record of the international community is less visible, but no less damaging.
The 2.5-year war between the RSF and Sudan's government has been brutal. But as Margaret Evans shows us, what's happening in Fasher is believed to be on another scale.
The lucky ones, those who've managed to make it out of Fasher in Darfur with their lives and little else. The testimony they carry, a heavy enough burden. Moeldin Bakit has made it to a camp for the displaced in the north with what's left of his family. How do you feel when losing your wife, children, and sisters in the same war, he says? What was our fault in this war? Nearly 3 weeks after the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces captured the city, a news blackout remains in place in Fasher. The UN estimates 90,000 people have fled. Many more are believed still trapped.
We are all trying to negotiate this access.
Médecins Sans Frontières is treating those who've managed to escape into Wheela, 60 kilometers west of Fasher.
People who indeed suffer torture, gun wounds, a lot of malnutrition cases.
The RSF now controls much of the Darfur region in western Sudan, and observers say its battle against the Sudanese armed forces is already moving east to Kordofan. In what's left of the Sudanese capital, people fleeing the city of Bara in North Kordofan have begun to arrive. Halil says RSF fighters are going house to house there, rounding up men. They told us, you celebrated with the army. We have to kill you all, he said. Both sides in this war have been accused of atrocities. And an estimated 21 million people are now living in acute food insecurity. Despite that, the UN's funding appeal for Sudan has received just over a quarter of what's needed. A forgotten war. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
Russia unleashed hundreds of drones and 18 missiles on Kyiv overnight, killing at least 6, according to Ukrainian officials. The largest attack on the capital in 3 weeks lit up the night sky. And despite Russian claims that they do not target civilians, it tore holes in apartment buildings. Also overnight, Ukraine used locally designed missiles and drones to strike Novorossiysk, a key Russian port on the Black Sea. It struck down an oil terminal that handles 2% of the world's supply. Delegates at the UN's climate conference are questioning Canada's commitment to its climate targets on a day that began with a fresh wave of local protests. International climate correspondent Susan Ormiston has more from Brazil.
Indigenous protesters blocking a road, taking a stand silently. Families outside the climate conference saying you need to include us inside more. COP doesn't speak for us, this woman says. It speaks to the interests of countries and companies. Guarding the venue after demonstrators broke in 2 nights ago, federal police in riot gear. Not engaging this time, the gathering is disruptive but peaceful too, and succeeds in drawing out COP30 President Andre Correa do Lago, swarmed in a crush of people. We're in the middle. Could you give us a comment in English?
We're going to have a dialogue.
What can you offer the indigenous people?
They have say. There are more than 500 indigenous Brazilians in the delegation. So it's just that it's a group that we have to see how we integrate them better to the delegation.
Later, inside the conference, the CEO defended the right to demonstrate.
The reason for having a COP in the Amazon is for us to listen to the very people that are most vulnerable.
Senior government ministers join negotiations next week to lay out their country's plans. But Canada's 2 ministers, left Friday for Monday's budget vote,
I think there's some disappointment, yes.
fueling questions about Canada's new climate leadership, says this former negotiator with Germany.
The transition away from fossil fuels and triple renewables, and then there's this question, well, where will Canada be?
Prime Minister Mark Carney's ramping up natural gas exports and mines in the major projects announcement landed with a thud here.
If we keep expanding oil and gas like this, we have no hope at meeting our emissions targets.
Canadians at COP were direct.
We have seen a significant weakening in Canada's approach to tackling climate change.
But demonstrators here are not weakening, with the world watching. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Belen.
Speed cameras in Ontario are no longer allowed to issue tickets. A provincial ban is now in effect. Philip Lishanuk with why Toronto's mayor says the province isn't offering nearly enough replacement funding to keep residents safe.
In the last 9 months, this speed camera in Ottawa's East End has raked in almost $3 million.
People seem to speed down here. They think it's a highway.
But now all Ontario speed cameras are out of commission, banned by the province. Premier Doug Ford calls them a municipal cash grab. And their success in slowing traffic overblown. His transportation minister says if they were so effective at deterring speeding, the number of violations would be dropping.
We've got a camera in the city of Toronto that has issued over 70,000 tickets and continuously issued more and more every single year.
That notorious camera in Toronto's West End has made more than $7 million for the city, chopped down 7 times, now soon to be gone for good. But this researcher says the cameras save lives.
What we do know from studies that are well documented, that the faster a car is going when it hits a pedestrian or a cyclist, the more likely that person is going to die.
A study by researchers at the Hospital for Sick Children and Toronto Metropolitan University showed the cameras reduced the number of speeding vehicles by 45% in the city. And York Region found vehicle speeds decreased by an average of 15 kilometers an hour, and serious injuries dropped from an annual average of 39 to 8. The province says it will make $210 million available to municipalities for traffic calming measures, like speed bumps, raised crosswalks, and better signage. But Toronto's mayor says that's not nearly enough because the camera revenue was paying for crossing guards and traffic cops.
How are we going to find the funding for the 991 crossing guards?
She and the mayors of more than 20 municipalities urged Ford to keep the cameras, but that seems unlikely. Philip Lishanuk, CBC News, Toronto.
Governor General Mary Simon is now out of hospital and continuing to recover at home after suffering from a respiratory illness. It forced her to miss Tuesday's Remembrance Day ceremony in Ottawa. Rideau Hall says Chief Justice Richard Wagner will represent her at next week's state visit of the King and Queen of Sweden. Some of the country's most prominent neo-Nazis met in a Vancouver neighborhood last summer.
This gathering is a kind of alliance-building exercise.
A CBC News investigation tracks down some of those who attended. Coming up. Plus, opposition to a Nova Scotia plan for North America's first ever whale sanctuary.
We're all going to have our ocean access completely taken away from us.
But that's not the only view. And later, this seal narrowly avoids becoming a meal for some orcas.
He is on our boat.
It's a great escape caught on tape. We're back in 2. In Newfoundland, a Supreme Court judge has granted the provincial Liberal Party's request for a recount in the district of Topsail-Paradise. Recount requests in 2 other districts were rejected. The judge said that during the provincial election last month, some ballots had candidate names circled instead of marked with an X. If the Liberal candidate is victorious in the recount, it could flip the PC's majority government status. The recount is expected to start on Tuesday. A plan for North America's first ever whale sanctuary is making waves along Nova Scotia's eastern shore. As Selena Alders shows us, even though nothing is imminent, landowners and residents there are divided.
Ocean access will be cut off for all landowners.
Tracy Burns-Gagnon and her family own the largest plot of land in Wine Harbor, a small village along Nova Scotia's eastern coast. It's also the site of a proposed whale sanctuary backed by a U.S. nonprofit.
It's a sad day that the government would choose an American company over Nova Scotians.
The province has given its approval to grant the organization a land and water lease. Burns-Gagnon says it's ignoring a policy that requires unanimous consent from affected landowners before Crown leases are considered.
We're all going to have our ocean access completely taken away from us, and no one was consulted.
Tammy Vautour is a local cafe owner. She says the sanctuary would bring in much-needed tourism and employment.
We're at a tipping point right now that if we don't do something for our community, we're going to lose it.
The $20 million plan recently garnered attention as becoming a possible site for some of the beluga whales from Ontario's Marineland. But the now shuttered amusement park refuses to release the mammals to the proposed refuge, citing a lack of proven financial viability, among other concerns.
It's not perfect, but let's do everything we can to work together and be good neighbors and support the whales.
The sanctuary's CEO, Charles Vinnick, insists the facility will be open by the summer, but more fundraising and permits are needed before construction can begin. The Nova Scotia government would not make anyone available for an interview. In a recent statement, a spokesperson said reaching consensus on any issue is often difficult, and the province felt there was enough support for the sanctuary to move forward with the lease. Selena Alders, CBC News, Wine Harbor, Nova Scotia.
As we head into Grey Cup weekend, there are questions about the future of the league and some controversial new rule changes.
They're tinkering with something that goes back 112 years.
Can it turn around a shrinking fan base? Plus, a secretive neo-Nazi conference in a Vancouver neighborhood.
Get this number. We are journalists. It's what we do.
CBC's Visual Investigations Unit tracks down who was there, including some gym owners and coaches. And when Mark Carney announced his major nation-building projects, a BC mine was high on the list.
You are talking about a very significant potential economic story within the region.
Lindsay Duncombe looks at the promise and the risks of the Red Chris mine. The National breaks down the stories shaping our world. Next. King Charles is now 77. He celebrated his birthday in Wales, where not only did he get a castle-shaped cake, he got to drive a South Wales metro train. To mark the occasion, Buckingham Palace released a new photo of the monarch taken at his Sandringham estate. This is Grey Cup weekend in Winnipeg. The Saskatchewan Roughriders and Montreal Alouettes will go head-to-head in what is a very Canadian battle. But changes are coming that will make the CFL look a little more American. Cameron McIntosh with how the commissioner is defending them.
Hammers it away, looking for the Rouge and the win!
Only in the CFL.
A walk-off Rouge to end the season and win it!
Can you kick wide of the goal, through the end zone, and still get a point? The Rouge, quirky, Canadian, and something you may never see again. It's one of several rule changes that has fans at this year's Grey Cup Festival talking.
They're tinkering with something that goes back 112 years.
I don't want them to turn us into the NFL.
I think the rule changes are about showcasing our game as well as we possibly can.
The new CFL commissioner, in his first State of the League speech, says the changes will speed up the game and improve scoring. Starting in 2027, it will also include a shorter field, down from 110 yards to 100, with goalposts moved to the back of the end zones, similar to the NFL.
We are not in competition with the NFL. We want to make sure that those who have a propensity to love football understand just how amazing our game is.
A recent Angus Reid poll shows among Canadian football fans a near even split between preferences for the CFL and NFL, with fans under 54 preferring the NFL over the CFL. capturing them critical to the CFL's future.
If young people in Canada love the NFL, then give them the NFL.
Sports economist Moshe Lander says the changes are worth the risk.
And I don't think that 55-plus white male demographic is really going to go anywhere else.
The CFL is reporting modest increases in attendance and gate revenues this year. Johnston also promising a greater push on digital platforms like TikTok and fantasy football, insisting other Canadian characteristics are not up for change.
We are 3 down, 65-yard wide, 12-player league.
One that after this Grey Cup will start to look and feel different. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. Drilling down on a BC open pit mine on Mark Carney's nation-building projects list.
It's one of the most attractive jurisdictions in the world.
The potential benefits and obstacles to expansion. But first,
I find it extremely alarming.
Inside a secret neo-Nazi gathering in Vancouver.
This gathering is a kind of alliance-building exercise.
Unmasking some of the participants, including martial arts gym owners and coaches. CBC's Visual Investigations Unit's Eric Zito spoke to some of those who attended and reveals their extremist ties. Some of the video you're about to see contains racist and anti-Semitic language and images.
This is a secretive neo-Nazi conference.
Make no mistake, we are at war.
Attended by gym owners, coaches, trainers, networking with white supremacists that are conducting military-style drills. The topic of the event, forming disciplined groups of men who can rebuild our world amidst the coming wreckage. We obtain video, identify organizers and attendees, and expose how this movement, which often gathers in privately owned gyms, is growing in Canada.
We're just kind of trying to figure out why you're there. Hello?
White supremacist groups that recruit young men to train and fight are getting bolder, like this demonstration by Second Sons, a group led by this guy, Jeremy McKenzie.
I will do everything in my power to these people to death! Yeah!
Giving a Nazi salute here. Members of Second Sons and other groups gathered in Vancouver in July for a conference run by the Exiles of the Golden Age, a white supremacist group that's really into mixed martial arts and ancient Germanic traditions like this ritual to mark the changing of seasons, complete with a swastika. This is some of the imagery that they put on their social profiles.
Okay, they're definitely Nazis. Look at that shit. Terrible.
Now, their whole deal might be confusing if you're not familiar with their lingo, but it's all in their name. The phrase Exiles of the Golden Age comes from a text by Savitri Devi, a notorious Nazi philosopher. And in this poster for last year's conference, they call upon all men against time. The ultimate man against time? According to Devi, Adolf Hitler. Is this a far-right movement? Is this a neo-Nazi movement? What is it?
It's absolutely a neo-Nazi movement.
So the Exiles advertised the conference on social media, and the nonprofit Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which tracks hate groups, took notice.
We knew that this was going to be a fairly large gathering of white nationalists and neo-Nazis in BC, so we put in place a plan to try to identify the people who would be attending this event.
The Exiles keep the location secret, first meeting at a park to vet attendees.
So once we identified the park where it was being held, we very quickly just looked at Google Maps and saw, well, where could they hold an event of this size that would be within a reasonable distance for them to reroute people. And one of the venues I saw right away was the Scottish Cultural Centre.
The Scottish Cultural Centre is on a diverse block. There's a Taiwanese Canadian Cultural Society, a mosque, and a Buddhist education center.
And we had a photographer, and they collected we had over 50 individuals' pictures who attended that event.
We go to the Scottish Cultural Centre to ask about the event, but the executive director wasn't there. Later, we call him.
So you didn't know this was a neo-Nazi gathering?
Of course not. Well, on the contract they said it's listed as a conference, and I said, what's this about? So he says it's a book release. So, okay, that's fine.
Well, we looked at the books being sold, like this one, The Cultured Thug Handbook, a guide to radical right-wing thought.
The common thread seems to be, really a deeply white supremacist, male supremacist, anti-Semitic movement. This isn't just a pagan movement with an interest in the swastika or an interest in the esoteric Germanic traditions, but that they're really interested in the fascism that goes along with these.
Okay, so why focus on this event? Well, it was a meeting point for different types of white supremacists inside Canada and outside it, showing how this movement is growing and building alliances. One of the speakers, Marcus Folin, a Swedish white supremacist YouTuber.
Are you against whites having power, then you are the anti-white extreme one.
And American Paul Wagner.
What we do is not an escapism, nor is it a fantasy. It is a war for our future. And it's a very real war for our future.
Co-founder of the Wolves of Vinland, which the Southern Poverty Law Center calls a hate group. Folin says he was stopped at the border and turned around, and Wagner decided not to try it, so they gave their talks virtually.
Canada is a totalitarian, liberal, left-wing regime. They have no interest in having a quote-unquote right-wing extremist coming to their country.
But the Canadians who were there include at least 3 people wearing Second Sons Canada uniforms, and Josh Bruce and Robertson DeChazle, co-owners of a white supremacist clothing brand.
So Rob DeChazle has been a neo-Nazi for a very long time.
Here's a photo of DeChazle wearing a shirt with the logo of the Hammerskins, a neo-Nazi organization, and on the wall behind him, the same insignia.
What makes you say I was an attendee at that event?
It was documented. There was documented the number of people that were there, and you're one of those people. But I've announced it.
How did you get this number?
We are journalists. That's what we do.
I'm not going to answer any more questions if you can't tell me that.
After we talked to DeChazle, the exiles released a public statement telling attendees not to talk to us, and said, "We have nothing to hide."
This gathering is a kind of alliance-building exercise.
So we uncover well-known white supremacists and people linked to prominent groups. We also find people you might not expect. Gym owners and coaches. Here's Lane Palmer. Palmer, who sometimes goes by Lane Jackson, is an organizer according to the exiles.
Principles that are ethnically exclusive, both biologically and spiritually.
And we match his photo to the profile of a coach at West Shore Boxing Gym in Langford, BC. We also spot him in this video released by the exiles. He doesn't respond to our emails or calls, and his profile is removed from the gym's website. The gym tells us that they weren't aware of his background, and he's no longer part of the gym.
I started writing about these groups over a decade ago. At the time, very few people took me seriously.
What does it say to you that these groups and MMA gyms are coming together?
It suggests something far more sinister too, that this is deeper and more widespread than we may have initially considered.
We also find Carl Stornis Bliss. He co-owns a strength training company which frequently operates out of a gym in Mission, BC. He was also a children's coach there at one point. And in this photo on the gym's Instagram page, he shows off a tattoo of a skull symbol used by the Nazi SS. And in this photo, there's a Nazi SS symbol on the back of his helmet. We've been trying to reach him at his gym without a response.
Carl Bliss?
Stornis Bliss, yes.
But then he calls us from an anonymous number.
You were documented being there, so I'm just curious to know why you were there.
I didn't go to anything in Vancouver at a center.
Scottish Cultural Center in Vancouver in July.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, man.
But check this out. His right arm tattoo and this shirt match the conference footage. We call the owner of Mission BJJ.
I was led to believe this was a jiu-jitsu seminar.
When we spoke to him, he didn't remember attending anything in Vancouver in July.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because my gym has so many diverse backgrounds of Indians, Filipinos, and if I thought that we had a white supremacist there, that would... Yeah, it actually blows my mind, to be honest, but...
Is he still going to be at your gym?
No, I've told him to leave the gym.
Finally, here's Ron Pierce, owner of Foundry Combat Sports in Duncan, BC. His gym teaches adults and children with diverse backgrounds. Pierce can be seen wearing the same sweater in a photo from his gym's Instagram. We try to contact him too.
We're doing some research on an event that happened this past summer in Vancouver, the Scholars Cultural Center. We noticed that you were one of the guys that were at this event. We were just kind of trying to figure out what was going on, why you were there, and we're just curious to kind of figure out that part of it.
What do you mean?
What do you mean what I mean? Sorry, I'm confused. Hello?
Yeah, I find it extremely alarming that there would be any extremist group or fascist fight clubs showing up in Vancouver. Any group that is foundational premise is violence against others based on race are not welcome in Vancouver.
Mixed martial arts and combat sports, many of them can be significant gateways to far-right extremism. But I have to stress that it doesn't always have to be this way. There are plenty of anti-fascist and progressive-leaning mixed martial arts. This is a space they may have co-opted, but it is not a space that belongs solely to them.
So after speaking to the executive director of the Scottish Cultural Centre where the event was held, we were told that they would be reviewing its booking policies and booking procedures to help prevent situations like this in the future.
And we saw, Eric, how some of the gyms responded in the story, but one has now issued an apology?
Yeah, so a couple nights ago, Foundry Combat Sports in Duncan, BC, on Vancouver Island. It's the gym owned by Ron Pierce. He was the fellow that hung up on us on the story. The gym issued an apology on social media saying it made a grave mistake by not verifying the nature of the event and that it does not support any Nazi or white supremacist beliefs.
Okay, thanks for this. Eric Zito in Toronto tonight. Coming up, an old BC open pit mine high on Canada's nation-building projects list.
Copper is a very attractive mineral within our portfolio.
The big economic opportunities and the potential environmental cost. Next. A decade-old BC mine fast-tracked for expansion to create more jobs and big money, but it might carry risk.
All of Red Chris Mine's waste leaks into the surrounding environment, into the creeks and lakes.
Navigating the pathway between economic growth and environmental concern. Lindsay Duncombe breaks down why they're looking to move from open pit to underground mining and what might stand in the way of the deal.
One of the 5 major projects on the federal government's list is the expansion of the Red Chris copper and gold mine in northwestern BC. Here's where it is. It is way up there, about a 7-hour drive from either Whitehorse or Terrace. It's remote, the traditional territory of the Tahltan Nation. British Columbia may be beautiful, but this part of the province is breathtaking.
It's an important step in reconciliation and further developing the potential of northern BC, and is part of a bigger package.
There was surprise when the Prime Minister put Red Chris on the list. Its approval is up to the province, the nation, and the company, not the feds. But highlighting this project sends a signal that the federal government wants to transform this part of northwestern BC. The economic opportunity is big, but there are risks.
It's a region where we'd like to operate for many generations to come.
John Mullally is the head of external relations at Newmont. That's the American company that owns 70% of the operation. Why does Newmont want to expand?
The copper is a very attractive mineral within our portfolio.
Why so attractive? Copper conducts electricity. Want solar panels? You need copper. Want EVs? Copper. Want to build transmission lines, AI data centers, battery storage? Copper, copper, copper. And have you seen the price of gold lately? Combine the two minerals and shareholders see dollar signs and governments start counting royalty checks.
So in a way, is it like two for the price of one? You get some copper and you get some gold with the same mining operation?
It is. It's one of the most attractive jurisdictions in the world.
But the thing is, Newmont's current open pit mine is almost at the end of its life, just a couple of years left. What the company wants to do is move the operations underground and do something called block cave mining. UBC professor John Steen explains it this way.
It's sort of like upside down mining, upside down surface mining. That's one way of thinking about it.
Basically, miners drill a hole deep underground. Gravity forces the rock to collapse into the hole, then those rocks can be collected and processed.
And that's a much more efficient way of mining. It uses a lot of gravity to collapse and break the rock.
What are the risks of block cave mining?
Yeah, so uncontrolled rock fractures is the biggest risk.
Remember last summer? 3 miners were rescued after spending 60 hours trapped in a BC mine. That was Red Chris, and those miners were doing exploratory work for the block cave project.
And from a block cave perspective, we are developing the lessons learned and going through our investigation, and we'll be finalizing that shortly. And we are confident that we can do this safely.
One of the big reasons to expand, jobs. Right now, about 1,500 people work at the mine. If the mine closes, they're out of work. With expansion, they get to keep their jobs, and the number would go up to about 1,800 jobs during construction. More than 200 people working at the mine are members of the Tahltan Nation. The Tahltan Nation is partners with the mine. Its development corporation makes $100 million annually from Red Chris. That would continue with expansion. The nation didn't want to do an interview for this story, but when the national projects list was announced, it put out a statement saying any expansion of the Red Chris mine will only happen with Tahltan consent. Those negotiations are happening now.
The bottom line is no consent, no mine. That's just a fact.
One of the things the nation and the province is considering is how the expansion could impact the environment. On the plus side, block cave mining generates far fewer greenhouse gases than surface operations. Adrian Birchtold is with the environmental group Skeena Wild. It's been monitoring the Red Chris project for 5 years. She worries about water.
There was a series of, I would say, oversights on the part of the government that have resulted in long-standing environmental issues. All of Red Chris Mine's waste leaks into the surrounding environment, into the creeks and lakes, at rates that are much greater than what was predicted and planned for.
In fact, the province of British Columbia has repeatedly fined the mine for instances of failing to monitor groundwater. Newmont says that dates back to before it bought the mine and says it's spending more than $150 million to improve monitoring.
The government should not be speeding up a process that they are already not getting right at regular speeds. If we're seeing all of these issues arising at Red Chris under the current regulatory structure at a normal speed, then how many more problems are we going to see as they fast track?
And it's not just Red Chris she worries about. Check out all the proposed and active mining sites in the area, many owned by multinational corporations in partnership with Indigenous nations.
This project could unlock development of transmission, lead to future investment in roads and telecommunications.
As Newmont sees it, Red Chris is just the beginning.
So you are talking about a very significant potential economic story within the region.
For all the support, it's not a done deal. The province and the Tahltan have to sign off on assessments and approvals. Then the company will make a call on the business case. There's money to be made here, but everyone's still sorting out at what cost.
The Red Chris Mine expansion project might benefit from another major project announced Thursday, the North Coast Transmission Line. When online, it's expected to deliver low-cost and clean electricity to the facility. Coming up, a SEAL takes a life-saving leap of faith.
The SEAL is basically directly underneath the boat. I was like, is he trying to get on?
How he managed to escape a pod of killer whales in our moment. This is Smith Siramoskal posing with a seal who moments before hopped onto the back of his boat to flee from a pod of killer whales near Seattle, Washington. The seal managed to stay on board until the coast was clear, and tonight his life-saving leap is our moment.
Oh my God. Oh, you poor thing.
We noticed that the seal had popped up and noticed us. The moment it saw us, it turned for us and just bolted. And at that point, we saw dorsal fins coming from every which direction. The orca are searching all around for it, and the seal is basically directly underneath the boat. And I was like, is he trying to get on? He's not trying. He's on.
He is on our boat.
His eyes are sticking up over the back seat, as if he's checking out, like, am I better off up here or down there? We're surrounded by whales. After about 20 minutes realizing the food wasn't coming back off the boat, they kind of lost interest and moved on. He's just looking around with those big, like, puppy dog eyes. It was ridiculous. He kind of settled in. After about half an hour's nap, he kind of gets up and he sniffs the air and realizes he's okay. And then off he went.
Bye, buddy.
We really thought that we'd be able to experience anything like that firsthand. That is likely to be the single most unique wildlife encounter I'll ever have.
Smith says there were about a dozen orcas, and he thinks they were teaching their calves how to hunt, which is why they circled for 30 minutes. In the end, of course, they left, and they named the seal Bahati, which is Swahili for lucky. So I would say that's a pretty appropriate name. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. I'm Erica Johnson in Vancouver. Take care.